I've been babysitting since I was a teenager, so by the time I hit 26, I thought I had seen it all. Kids throwing tantrums, pets making messes, parents coming home way later than agreed. But nothing prepared me for what happened that night at the Thompsons' house. It started as just another job. Mrs. Thompson called me last minute, asking if I could watch her 2 kids, Emily, 6, and Jacob, 4, while she and her husband attended a fundraiser downtown. They lived in a quiet neighborhood in one of those picturesque suburban homes that felt safe and cozy. I had babysat for them a couple of times before, and the kids were sweet, so I agreed. When I arrived, Mrs. Thompson was rushing to get ready, looking more stressed than usual. "Thanks so much for coming, Sarah," she said, ushering me inside. "The kids just finished dinner, so they're playing in the living room. They should be in bed by 8. "No problem at all," I replied, setting my bag down. "Anything I should know?" She hesitated. "Well, Emily's been having nightmares. She says there's a shadow man in her room. We've checked, of course. Nothing there. We think it's just her imagination, but she's been pretty scared." I nodded. "I'll make sure she feels safe." Mrs. Thompson smiled, though there was still a flicker of concern in her eyes. "We'll be back around midnight. Call if you need anything." With that, the Thompsons left, and I joined the kids in the living room. We played board games and watched cartoons for an hour, but I noticed Emily was quieter than usual. She kept glancing toward the hallway leading upstairs, like she was expecting something. When it was time for bed, Jacob went down without protest, but Emily hesitated. "Can you leave the light on?" she whispered as I tucked her in. "Of course." I turned on a small nightlight next to her bed. "Is this okay?" She clutched her stuffed rabbit and nodded. "Yeah, just don't leave the door all the way closed." I smiled. "You got it." I left the door slightly ajar and headed downstairs. At around 10 p.m., just as I was settling in on the couch, I heard a soft thud from upstairs. I froze. Thinking Jacob had fallen out of bed, I rushed up to check on him. He was still tucked under his blankets, sound asleep. I stepped into Emily's room next. She was awake, eyes wide open, staring at the corner of the room. A wave of unease washed over me. "Emily? He's mad," she whispered. I felt my stomach twist. "Who's mad?" "The shadow man," she murmured. "He doesn't like you here." I turned to look at the corner of the room where she was staring. There was nothing there, just shadows cast by the nightlight. A shiver ran down my spine. "Emily, it's just a dream," I said gently. "There's nothing there." She shook her head violently. "He says you're lying." I sighed, trying to keep my voice calm. "Why don't we go get some water?" She nodded, and I took her downstairs to the kitchen. As she drank from her cup, I noticed she kept glancing over her shoulder. I forced a smile. "Better?" She hesitated. "He followed us." I felt my pulse quicken. "Emily." Before I could finish, I heard it. A soft tapping sound coming from the front door. I stiffened. I wasn't expecting anyone. Leaving Emily at the table, I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. No one was there. A shiver crawled up my spine. Maybe it was just the wind knocking against something outside. I checked the locks. Double locked. Good. I took a deep breath and turned back to Emily. She was standing next to the couch now, hugging her stuffed rabbit. "He's inside," she whispered. My stomach dropped. I swallowed hard, trying not to let my fear show. "Emily, there's no one inside. We're safe." She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "He doesn't like you." I felt something shift in the air, a heaviness I couldn't explain. The room suddenly felt wrong. The baby monitor in the corner of the room crackled. A soft, raspy whisper filtered through the static. I turned toward the sound, my blood running cold. The monitor had been on Jacob's nightstand. That meant someone, or something, was in his room. I grabbed Emily's hand and rushed upstairs. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Jacob was still asleep, peaceful, unaware. The baby monitor sat next to his bed, its small green light blinking. I picked it up, listening. Silence. I exhaled sharply. Maybe I imagined it? Maybe the monitor had just picked up some interference? Then, from behind me, a creak. I turned toward the hallway. The attic door, the one that had always been sealed shut, was now slightly open. Cold dread pooled in my stomach. Nope. Nope. Hell no. I grabbed both kids and rushed them downstairs, locking the living room door behind us. I called Mrs. Thompson, my voice shaking. She picked up immediately. "Sarah, is everything okay?" I hesitated. I didn't want to sound crazy, but I also wasn't about to stay silent. "I don't know," I admitted. "Emily keeps saying there's someone in the house. I just heard weird noises over the baby monitor, and the attic door, it's open." Silence. Then, in a quiet voice, she asked, "Did she say he's mad?" My blood ran cold. I looked at Emily, who was staring at me with wide, knowing eyes. "Yeah," I whispered. Another pause. Then, Mrs. Thompson sighed. "We're coming home." The line went dead. I sat on the couch, keeping both kids close to me, my heart hammering. Every tiny noise made me jump. At exactly 11:57 p.m., just as I heard the Thompsons' car pulling into the driveway, the lights flickered. And then I heard it, a whisper, right next to my ear. "I don't like you here!" I gasped, spinning around. Nothing. The front door opened and Mrs. Thompson rushed inside. She took one look at my face and whispered, "You saw him, didn't you?" I couldn't speak. She nodded, looking exhausted. "We don't know what he is, but he doesn't hurt anyone. He just watches, and he doesn't like strangers." I looked at Emily, who buried her face in her mom's side. "You should go," Mrs. Thompson said softly. I didn't argue. I grabbed my things and left. I never babysat for them again. A few months later, I heard they moved. Mrs. Thompson never explained why, but sometimes, late at night, when I'm lying in bed, I swear I feel it, that same heavy presence. And I wonder, did I bring him with me?